Hello and welcome to W.A.R.N. World News. Reporting today from St. Michael's Tower, I'm Dan.
And I'm Mary. Our top story, man's pride is no match for God's power.
It starts right at the beginning, with the first two people on earth. Adam and Eve had a clear understanding of what God wanted them to do, and they wasted no time doing exactly the opposite. Our first parents disobeyed God and were exiled from the Garden of Eden. As a result, all of mankind has suffered the consequences of their pride. Pain, suffering, hardship, and death all came into the world because Adam and Eve committed this bold act of disobedience.
Not many pages later in the Bible is the history of Noah and the flood. God saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that the thoughts in his heart fashioned nothing but wickedness. God regretted having made man on earth, and his heart grieved. Yet Noah was a faithful man in this wicked generation, obedient to the laws of God. So the Father chose to save Noah, his family, and the animals from a flood that wiped out everything else on the planet.
Not long thereafter came the Tower of Babel, which was a tremendous monument built not for the worship and praise of God, but for the glory and pride of man. It was so offensive to God that he punished the people by confusing their language, so the people could no longer understand one another, and he scattered them throughout the earth.
After this, it did not take long until the outrages against God coming from Sodom and Gomorrah necessitated God's action. Because of their atrocious sin, God annihilated entire cities and the people who lived there. God rained fire and brimstone upon the cities until they were reduced to ashes. And all that remained when the cloud of smoke settled was the Dead Sea, the lowest place on earth, under which some archaeologists suggest may be their remains.
And let's not forget about Moses and the Pharaoh. The Egyptian hardened his heart to the will of the Father, bringing about devastating grief to the Egyptian people. Despite his best efforts, he could not stop Moses from freeing the Israelites. God opened the Red Sea so that his people could escape across it, then closed the waters, drowning Pharaoh's army.
Undoubtedly, you're familiar with the next story about Job, the Old Testament biblical figure who was blameless and upright. He feared God and he turned away from evil. He had great wealth and a large family, but he was the object of Satan's scorn, and Satan tested Job's fidelity to God. Within days, all Job's land and wealth were destroyed, and all of his children died. He found himself dying, and all his friends had turned against him.
Yet God showed his mighty power to Job, that Job may not question him. God's mighty voice thundered, asking questions such as, "Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Who determined its measurements? Who laid its cornerstone when the morning stars sang together? Who shut in the sea with doors when it burst forth from the womb?"
We echo these words God spoke to Job. Shall a fault finder contend with the Almighty? He who argues with God, let him answer it. Will you even put God in the wrong? Will you condemn God that you may be justified? Have you an arm like God, and can you thunder with a voice like his?
God restored his faithful servant Job after admonishing him. Yet history makes it clear, man's pride and denial of the power of God can bring about devastating consequences. Signing off for W.A.R.N. World News, I'm Dan.
And I'm Mary. You have been warned.